Imagine a cold, gray dawn, January 24th, 1948. The air is thick with fog, the kind that clings to your skin and muffles every sound. In a cramped prison yard in Krakow, Poland, a woman stands on the edge of eternity. Her name is Maria Mandl, but history knows her as the Beast of Auschwitz. In mere moments, she will face justice for her crimes. But who was she? How did a small-town Austrian girl become a monster responsible for the deaths of over 500,000 people? And what happened in those final, fateful seconds before justice was served? Hey, history buffs! Welcome to History Unraveled, where we dive deep into the stories that shaped our world. If you're as hooked on the past as we are, smash that like button. Share this video with your buddies and hit that subscribe bell so you never miss a trip into history's wildest corners. Now let's jump back into the spine-chilling saga of Maria Mandl, the infamous Beast of Auschwitz. This isn't just the story of an execution. It's the story of a woman who thrived in the heart of darkness, of Auschwitz, where the screams of the innocent were drowned out by her cruelty. It's a story of a world gone mad, a trial that shook humanity, and a reckoning that still echoes today. So buckle up, history lovers. We're about to dive into the chilling tale of Maria Mandl, a tale that'll make your skin crawl, your heart ache, and your mind race with questions about good, evil, and everything in between. To understand Maria Mandl, we've got to rewind the clock to a Europe teetering on the edge of chaos. It's the early 20th century, and the scars of World War I are still fresh. Economies are tanking, people are starving, and resentment festers like an open wound. Into this mess steps Adolf Hitler, a man with a twisted vision of power and purity. By 1933, he's seized control of Germany, and by 1938, he's swallowed Austria whole. That's where our story begins, with a young woman named Maria Mandl, born in 1912 in the sleepy Austrian village of Münzkirchen. Maria wasn't born with blood on her hands. She was the daughter of a shoemaker, raised in a tight-knit Catholic family. Neighbors called her a nice girl, quiet, obedient, maybe even a little shy. But something inside her shifted as Hitler's shadow crept across Europe. By 1938, when Austria fell to the Nazis, Maria Mandl made a choice that would turn her into one of history's most feared villains. She signed up to serve the Reich, not as a soldier or a secretary, but as a guard in the concentration camps. And that, folks, is where the nice girl from Münzkirchen began her descent into darkness. Let's pause here and dig into Maria Mandl's early years, because understanding her transformation means peering into the soil where her darkness took root. Born on January 10, 1912 in Münzkirchen, a rural speck in Upper Austria, Maria grew up in a world far removed from the horrors she'd later orchestrate. Her father, a shoemaker, was a hard-working man, his hands calloused from years of stitching leather. Her mother, devout and stern, raised Maria and her siblings with a rigid sense of discipline rooted in Catholic values. Picture a little girl in a starched dress, kneeling in a pew, reciting prayers under the watchful eye of a priest. That was Maria, obedient, unremarkable, a face in the crowd. But what was it about that quiet village life that set the stage for her later brutality? Historians speculate that the post-World War I turmoil played a role. Austria, defeated and humiliated, was a nation adrift. The Treaty of Versailles had stripped it of pride and prosperity, leaving families like the Mandls scraping by. Unemployment soared, inflation devoured savings, and the streets buzzed with anger. Young Maria, barely a teenager, would have heard the whispers, neighbors blaming Jews, foreigners, anyone but themselves for the hardship. Did those seeds of resentment burrow into her mind, lying dormant until the Nazis gave them fertile ground? Psychologists offer another lens. Dr. Robert J. Lifton, a renowned expert on Nazi behavior, suggests that individuals like Mandel often harbored a latent need for control, a trait that could have been nurtured or twisted by her upbringing. Was her mother's strictness a comfort or a cage? Did her father's quiet labor teach her resilience or resentment? We don't have diaries or letters from young Maria, but we can imagine her as a girl who craved order in a world spinning out of control. By the time Hitler annexed Austria in 1938, that craving found a dark outlet. Maria's decision to join the SS wasn't impulsive. She'd worked briefly as a postal clerk, a mundane job that offered stability but no power. Then came the Anschluss, the Nazi takeover of Austria, and with it, a flood of propaganda. Posters plastered Münzkirchen streets, promising glory and purpose. For a 26-year-old woman with few prospects, the call to serve the Reich might have felt like a lifeline. But why the camps? Why not a factory or an office? Here's where the psychology gets murky. Some argue she was drawn to the authority, the chance to wield a whip instead of a pen. Others say it was ideological zeal, a belief in Hitler's final solution. Whatever the spark, it ignited a fire that would consume 500,000 lives. Mandel's first gig was at Lichtenberg, one of the Nazis' early camps for women. She started in 1938, just 26 years old, green but eager. And boy, did she make an impression. Survivors later described her as a terror with a whip. Mandel was known for her extreme cruelty toward prisoners, often with a disturbing smile. One inmate, Lena Haag, wrote in her memoir that Mandel's brutality stood out even among the SS. That smile, that cold glint in her eye. It was the first sign of the beast waking up inside her. Let's linger on that smile for a moment. What kind of person grins while inflicting pain? Modern criminologists might point to sadism, a psychological condition where pleasure comes from others' suffering. But Mandel wasn't a textbook case. At Lichtenberg, she was still finding her footing, learning the ropes under seasoned SS officers. The camp held political prisoners, communists, dissidents, women who dared to defy the Reich. They weren't the emaciated skeletons of Auschwitz yet. They were defiant, spirited, and Maria? She crushed that spirit with every crack of her whip. Picture her in those early days, a young woman in a crisp gray uniform, her blonde hair pulled tight under a cap, her boots clicking on the stone floors. The prisoners, shivering in thin dresses, watched her approach with dread. Lena Haag's account paints a vivid scene. A barracks inspection gone wrong, a woman too slow to stand, and Mandel descending like a storm. The whip wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of her will, a way to assert dominance in a world where she'd once been powerless. Did she feel a thrill as the leather met flesh? Did she see those women as enemies or just obstacles to her rise? In 1939, Mandel moved up the ladder to Ravensbrück, a camp built just for women. Here she wasn't just a guard anymore. She was Oberaufseherin, the chief overseer, by 1942. Power suited her. She'd single out women with curly hair, shaving their heads, or beating them bloody just for existing. Survivors said she'd stroll through the camp like a queen, her boots polished, her uniform crisp, while prisoners starved around her. Ravensbrück was her training ground. But Auschwitz, that's where she'd become a legend, and not the good kind. At Ravensbrück, Mandel's cruelty matured. The camp, nestled in northern Germany's marshlands, was a hell of mud and misery. Over 130,000 women passed through its gates. Tens of thousands never left. Maria ruled over them with an iron fist, her authority unquestioned by the guards beneath her. She'd oversee roll calls at dawn, standing tall as women collapsed from exhaustion. She'd order punishments for the smallest infractions. A missed stitch in a uniform, a glance too bold. One survivor, Margarete Buber-Neumann, recalled Mandel laughing as she kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach, a moment so brutal it defies comprehension. What drove her? Was it the Nazi ideology, drilled into her at training sessions where she'd sworn allegiance to Hitler? Or was it something deeper, a fracture in her soul that power alone could mend? Ravensbrück gave her a taste of godhood, control over life and death, a far cry from the shoemaker's daughter, stitching souls in Münzkirchen. And yet there's a haunting question. Did she ever pause, even for a second, to see the humanity in those she tormented? October 1942. Maria Mandel steps off a train at Auschwitz II-Birkenau, the deadliest killing machine of the Holocaust. She's 30 years old, and she's just been handed the keys to the women's camp. Tens of thousands of lives are now hers to control or destroy. Over the next 2 years, she'd send more than 500,000 women and children to the gas chambers. 500,000 souls gone on her say-so. That's a number so big it's hard to wrap your head around. So let's put it in perspective. That's the population of Atlanta, wiped out by one woman's orders. To grasp the scale of Mandel's crimes, we need to meet her victims, not as statistics, but as people. Take Sala Feder, a Polish-Jewish seamstress from Łódź. Before the war, Sala was 24, newly married, her hands skilled at threading needles through silk. She'd sing lullabies to her infant daughter, Miriam, dreaming of a quiet life. Then came the ghetto, the cattle cars, and Auschwitz. On a frigid morning in 1943, Sala stood in the selection line, clutching Miriam to her chest. Mandel approached, her eyes cold as steel. Without a word, she tore the baby from Sala's arms and flung her onto a truck bound for the gas chambers. Sala's scream pierced the air, a raw animal sound. And Mandel responded with brutal force, leaving Sala unconscious in the mud. Sala survived, but the loss of Miriam haunted her every breath. In a post-war interview, she whispered, "I still feel her weight in my arms. I hear her crying at night." That's the emotional wreckage Mandel left behind. A mother stripped of her child, a life reduced to memory. And Sala wasn't alone. There was Esther Grunwald, a Hungarian teenager who'd played violin in her school orchestra, now forced to join Mandel's twisted ensemble. Or Rachel Cohen, a grandmother who'd baked bread for her village, now a number tattooed on her arm, her family ashes in the wind. These women weren't just victims. They were daughters, sisters, dreamers. Their stories, pieced together from survivor accounts and camp records, paint a tapestry of loss. Imagine Esther's trembling hands as she played Mozart, her bow slipping as she watched children march to their deaths. Picture Rachel whispering prayers in Yiddish, her voice drowned by the crematoria's roar. Mandel didn't just kill them. She erased their pasts, their futures, their very humanity. Now let's talk about that orchestra. The Women's Orchestra of Auschwitz, Mandel's grotesque brainchild. She handpicked musicians from the prisoners, violinists, pianists, singers, women who'd once performed in concert halls or hummed tunes in kitchens. Under her command, they played daily, their music a perverse soundtrack to genocide. At roll calls, they struck up cheerful marches as women staggered to line up, their bodies frail from starvation. During selections, they played waltzes as families were torn apart. Even at executions, the strains of Beethoven floated over the gallows. For Mandel, it was a display of power. a way to mock the prisoners with beauty amid horror. But for the musicians it was torment. Alma Rosé, the orchestra's conductor, was a Viennese Jew whose talent had once dazzled Europe. Under Mandel's watch, she led her players with a baton that felt like a shackle. Survivor Anita Lasker-Wallfish, a cellist, later wrote, "We played to survive, but every note was a knife in our hearts." Imagine the dissonance, bowing a cello while your sister's screams echo from the gas chambers. Mandel would watch, her lips curling into that signature smile as if the music validated her reign. The pieces they played, Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik, Strauss's Blue Danube, were masterpieces turned into weapons. Music, meant to heal, became a tool of control, a way to lull the doomed into compliance. For the victims outside the orchestra, it was a cruel irony. Melodies of hope drifting over a landscape of death. How did they process that? Did some cling to the notes as a shred of sanity, while others cursed the sound as a taunt? Maria Mandel wasn't a lone wolf. She operated within a web of SS officers, subordinates, and even personal ties that shaped her world. At Auschwitz, she worked alongside men like Rudolf Höss, the camp commandant, whose meticulous efficiency matched her own. Höss later described her as competent, ruthless, a true believer, high praise in a regime built on terror. But there were tensions, too. Some male officers resented her authority, whispering that a woman had no place in their ranks. Mandel silenced them with results. Her women's camp ran like clockwork, a machine of death that impressed even the coldest Nazi hearts. Her subordinates, junior guards, many of them young Austrian women like her, feared her as much as the prisoners did. One guard, Irma Gracie, idolized Mandel, mimicking her brutality with a zeal that earned her the nickname Hyena of Auschwitz. Did Mandel see Grace as a protege or a rival? Their dynamic hints at a mentorship twisted by cruelty, a bond forged in blood. Beyond the camp, little is known of Mandel's personal life. She never married, had no children, and her letters home, if they existed, didn't survive. But rumors swirled of a brief romance with an SS officer, a fleeting connection snuffed out by war or ambition. Did she long for love, or had power become her only companion? By 1944, the Nazis were losing ground fast. The Allies were closing in, and the Third Reich was crumbling. Mandel got reassigned to Mühldorf, a subcamp of Dachau, as the SS tried to erase evidence of their crimes. But you can't hide a place like Auschwitz. In January 1945, Soviet troops rolled in and found a nightmare. Piles of bodies, gas chambers, and survivors too weak to stand. The world saw the truth, and the hunt for monsters like Mandel was on. Mandel bolted back to Austria, hiding out in her hometown like nothing had happened. Imagine her walking Münzkirchen's quiet streets, the same ones she'd skipped down as a child, now a fugitive in plain sight. Did she sleep soundly? Or did the ghosts of Auschwitz claw at her dreams? Justice doesn't forget. On August 10, 1945, U.S. forces nabbed her. She was cool as ice during interrogations, smart, unapologetic, still loyal to Hitler's cause. In November 1946, the Americans handed her over to Poland, where the real showdown was about to begin. November 24, 1947, Krakow, Poland. The Auschwitz trial kicks off, putting 41 ex-staffers, including Mandel, in the hot seat. This wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. The world watched as survivors stepped up, pointing fingers and reliving hell to make sure justice got its due. Mandel sat there, front and center, facing charges of crimes against humanity. Day one set the tone. The courtroom, a stark hall in Krakow's old city, buzzed with tension. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pencils scratching like a chorus of accusation. Survivors, gaunt but resolute, filled the benches, their eyes fixed on Mandel. She sat straight-backed, her face a mask of calm, as if the weight of 500,000 deaths couldn't touch her. The prosecution opened with a litany of horrors: gas chambers, beatings, the orchestra, each word a hammer blow to her defense. Salafeder's testimony came on day 3. She walked to the stand, her steps shaky, her hands trembling as she gripped the rail. "She took my baby," Sala said, her voice breaking, "threw her like trash and beat me when I begged." The room went still, the air thick with grief. Mandel stared ahead, her expression unreadable. Did she remember Sala? Did that moment flicker in her mind? Or had it dissolved into the blur of her crimes? Lucia Adelsberger followed, her voice steady but laced with pain. She described the orchestra, the children marching to the gas chambers as violins wept. Mandel stood there smiling, Lucia said. She enjoyed it. The crowd gasped, a ripple of outrage spreading through the gallery. Day after day, the testimonies piled up. Hundreds of voices, each a thread in a tapestry of suffering. The prosecution leaned hard on evidence, camp logs, witness accounts, even Mandel's own signature on execution orders. Mandel's defense was thin. She took the stand on day 12, her voice clipped and cold. "I followed orders," she said. "I had no choice. It was the Nazi playbook. Blame the system, dodge the guilt." But the judges pressed her. "Did orders tell you to smile, to beat women unconscious?" She faltered, her mask slipping for a moment, then snapped back into defiance. The crowd outside the courthouse grew daily, their chants of justice echoing through the streets. Were they baying for blood or mourning their lost? December 22, 1947, the verdict: guilty on all counts, death by hanging. Mandel didn't flinch, at least not in public. She was led back to Montelupic prison, the clock ticking down to her final dawn. January 24, 1948. 7:32 a.m., Montelupic prison. Maria Mandel, the woman who'd ruled Auschwitz with an iron fist, is led to the gallows. The fog's so thick you can barely see the noose, but it's there, waiting. A handful of Polish officials and witnesses stand by. No cheering, no jeering, just a heavy, solemn quiet. Mandel's in a plain prison dress, now. No SS uniform to hide behind. For the first time, she looks small. Let's zoom out to the prison yard. The fog wraps the scene in a ghostly shroud, the gallows a dark silhouette against the gray. Inside, Mandel's last moments unfold. Days earlier, she'd shared a cell block with Stanisława Raczławowa, a Polish resistance fighter who'd survived Auschwitz. Stanisława claimed Mandel broke down, whispering, "I'm sorry, forgive me." Was it genuine remorse or a plea born of fear? On the gallows, she's silent, her lips pressed tight as the noose is slipped around her neck. Outside, a crowd gathers, hundreds strong, their breath misting in the cold, their survivors, families of the dead, ordinary Poles drawn by the weight of the moment. Some clutch photos of loved ones lost to Mandel's orders. Others stand with clenched fists. There's no roar of triumph when the trapdoor drops at 7:32 a.m., just a collective exhale, a release of years of pain. Was it justice they felt, or revenge? Psychologists call this the bystander effect, twisted into catharsis. A crowd unified by shared trauma, their emotions a tangle of relief and rage. After the execution, her body was removed, and the crowd disperses slowly, their silence louder than any cheer. Maria Mandel's execution didn't erase the pain she caused. Over 500,000 women and kids, gone because of her. Today Auschwitz is a memorial, its barbed wire and barracks a stark reminder. Visitors walk its paths, laying flowers where Salah's baby died, where Esther's violin played. Survivor reunions bring aging voices together, their stories a lifeline to the past. In classrooms, Mandel's name is a case study. How does a nice girl become a beast? What made Mandel tick? Criminologists point to a mix of narcissism and obedience, a woman who craved control and found it in the SS. Victims like Salah show resilience amid despair, their survival a testament to the human spirit. The crowd's reaction blends justice with vengeance, a mirror to our own moral struggles. Mandel's story warns us, evil isn't born. It's made step by step, choice by choice. That's the story of Maria Mandel, her crimes, her trial, her end. It's heavy stuff, but it's history we can't ignore. If this hit you like it hit us, drop a like, share it with your crew, and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let's keep these stories alive, because forgetting, that's how history repeats itself.